I can't believe I've gone this long without checking out the story of the massive lad himself. You know, the lad that started a hotel, sponsored a Steelboat Run 2, and started the Gooberian Foundation. If you don't know, then I blame you for everything, because you've been living under a rock. His name is Robert E.O. Gooberian, but he prefers if you just call him Mr. Gooberian. He's an accomplished cow who came from very little, so most people in the realm respect him. Of course, talking about Mr. Gooberian himself would be a bit short, so why don't we talk about his entire lineage? From Ezekiel to John to George to Robert, this is the Gooberian family lineage. We shall begin with the first Gooberian, named Ezekiel, and he was born a long time ago, and I mean a long time ago, back in 1864. He was born in a middle-class family in Worcestershire where he lived his life chilling and vibing as a common English folk of the time. He grew up and went to Smithsonian College where he studied law. He graduated from the bottom of his class, but due to how college system works in England, if you went to a tier 1 college like the Smithsonian College instead of the Lancashire College, which is a tier 4 college, if you graduated bottom of the school in the Smithsonian College, you basically broke records in Lancashire. I mean, that college is made of poop. Quite literally. He found a job at a law firm and enjoyed his hard-earned job well. Every day after work, Ezekiel goes to a pub on Vulgar Street, where it's an unwritten rule that you must swear like every 5 seconds. So it's basically a TikTok video? Anyway, one day, he met someone at a pub named Martha Wrigleycombe. She was born on Vulgar Street. She practically knows the rules in and out. Ezekiel initially befriended her so that he would not die whenever he goes to the bar, but later their relationship grew and matured, and one day at Englishman Mad Lad Park, Ezekiel proposed to Martha and she accepted. March 13th, 1885, on their honeymoon, they went to France to get the cowpox vaccine and then traveled to Italy, as they decided to start their new life there. Then they decided to go to New York to start a new life, as Italy was just not ideal for them. And they found a lot of success, mostly because they actually spoke the same language as the locals, albeit a little posh. In 1891, Ezekiel and Martha gave birth to John Gooberian, and then later in 1895, they gave birth to Edward Gooberian. Edward and John went to the same school, where the two went radically different paths in the 1900s and 1910s. Edward took the dark side path where he basically became the bully, the jock. Basically, if you know that one kid in that class that is like, oh yeah, I'm so cool, and is experiencing his peak years in high school, he's basically that kid. Edward loved to play the brand new sport of basketball and is rather good at it. But he was born too early to experience the NBA, so his professional aspirations were just not there. While his games were playing, John and his parents came to watch him play. John was not interested in watching him play sports, as he was more interested in reading books, old manuscripts, and learning Latin. He snuck out of the apartment every night to go to the library to read some more books. Of course, his parents and younger brother liked to police the man like the plague. So Edward caught John sneaking out of the library in the middle of the street on April 28, 1917. Edward was going to approach John, but unfortunately a strange new invention came up and ran him over at 20 miles per hour. That thing was the automobile, and Edward was too busy having tunnel vision to attempt to catch John, that the car, which by sheer coincidence had a drunk driver in it, ran Edward over. Edward was in critical condition but was still alive at the spot. John tried to help him, but he saw a biplane coming down hot, so he had to run away. The plane crashed on the spot and a big explosion happened, which killed Edward on the spot and various apartment members too. It was crazy because it was the first joint car plane crash. John was scarred with that memory for life. He was scarred that he could have not saved Edward in time. He was glad to hear that the drunk driver was also blown up in the crash, but the amount of guilt he felt was great. That memory was with him for a while. Thankfully, Ezekiel and Martha were at the brand new car dealership, experiencing the first cars and experiencing the pain of car dealers. When they finally came home after about 24 hours, they saw the ruckus and they were heart-stricken by the news of Edward. Many years later, when John was older, he tried to be a better person as he thought of, what would have Edward done? He studied to become a banker, which attracted many people to his business. He opened a popular bank on Wall Street and got really popular business since this was the Roaring 20s. However, the Great Depression hit and everyone got L'd except for John, as he had some shady insider trading details that suggested that he needed to prepare for the crash. He kept his bank open as he genuinely felt that he needed to help people that experienced the same suffering as he did with Edward. His bank was especially popular with Italian immigrants for whatever reason. One of John's clients were the Davaca family. The Davaca family came from Italy to escape the dictatorship that was growing at the time. Anna the Vodka came into the picture as she needed a home, and seeing as John had a large house that he gifted his parents with his banker money, he thought that some new lads in the house wouldn't hurt. It was a wise choice. Anna felt right at home and told her life story in Italy. Anna da Vaca, born July 16, 1904, was the only daughter of Giuliano and Lucia da Vaca, both of whom were famous architects. Both created some famous cow statues around Sicily. When the dictatorship was growing in power, they decided to leave for America as they wanted to escape the turmoil. John and Anna grew in their relationship, and they had a shared love for making buildings. The Vacas had a love for architecture, so they both built many homeless shelters and apartments together, and in 1936, they got married. They decided to move to San Diego, California to live another life there. John and Anna were basically set for life since, John was a banker and Anna was an architect. So they decided that sunny San Diego would be a nice retirement location. They had a few children in the following years, such as Donna Gooberian, born 1937, Giovanni Gooberian, born 1939, and George Gooberian in 1941. In their life in San Diego, everything was calm and sunny. Of course, this was during wartime and just a few months away from Pearl Harbor, so the lads were just experiencing their lives. The war happened, and thankfully the children were too young to get drafted, and the older Gooberians were just too old to get drafted. Speaking of which, in 1942, Ezekiel died due to old age, and just 3 months later, Martha died due to old age too. John could not attend their funeral, which he regretted a bunch, but he gave access to his parents the most luxurious funeral of all time. Nothing too eventful happened during the next few years, so we should skip to 1960. The first incarnation of the Beatles was about to release their first hit single, It's Okay to Leave a Bee in a Hot High. Donna decided to become an architect as per family tradition. Giovanna decided to become a banker as her father was becoming old and gray, and believed that Giovanna was the one to inherit the Gooberian bank company. George Gooberian decided that he wanted to find who he is in life. He decided that, at just 19 years old, to go and travel to Japan. He saw many of the sights and sounds and decided that he would live there for 5 years. He encountered a famous fashionista named Kauko Ono Wangyo at a local ramen bar in Kyoto. Of course, George's Japanese was not great. Basically, whatever he heard on TV, he just repeated. But Kauko Ono helped him master Japanese, and he trained hard and eventually became great at the language. He started the Gooberian Animation Studios and enjoyed the whole animation process from when he was younger. So he decided that he had nothing to lose. And with the help of the Gooberian Bank Company, his studio grew. His studio brings in small indie animations to a larger audience, which the people of Japan adored. George and Kauko Ono decided to take a vacation to Wyoming in 1966, also known as the middle of nowhere. Somehow, by some miracle, Kauko Ono gave birth to a child, and in a rush, they decided to name that child Robert Edward Oswald, full name Robert E.O. Gooberian. George and Kauko Ono decided to leave the job of handling Robert to Donna and her children, Alice, Martina, and Salvatore Bastos. When Robert was over, he decided to run away and get a job, since he did not like the way Donna parented. He says that Donna was not a supportive parent of Robert's desires to become a doctor, so he ran away. Robert encountered a copper mine that he believed that he wanted to work at. The foreman swiftly gave them a job and he worked there for many years. Throughout the 70s, Robert worked hard in the mines, but he knew he couldn't work there forever. He decided to invest in the housing market in California to see if he could do anything about it, and he made big bucks. Thanks to that, he was finally able to leave the mines and go to a college in 1981 and study to become an economist. He was thinking of being a doctor, but then he realized that he was called to help people in other ways. In 1982, he got a call from George that he needed to attend the funeral for John Gooberian, who had just died recently. He had never known who John was and had a sour taste in his mouth for George and Kauko Ono, as they basically abandoned him when they were on the trip in Wyoming. While at the funeral, the Gooberians all had a family meetup in Balboa Park in San Diego. It was where they all took a family photo, all caught up with each other and basically just had fun. George was trying to get along with Robert, but Robert was difficult to accept his apology. Before the Gooberians went home, Robert decided to give George a chance, and George was delighted to hear this. He raised Robert in San Diego for a year, as George and Kauko Ono were on a business trip there. George and Robert repaired their relationship. George revealed that Robert actually had siblings around the time they had Robert, and they were around his age. Haruna Gooberian, who later on became a pianist, and Meushi Gooberian, who decided to become a teacher in the 90s and still is today. After George's business trip ended, He and Kakuo Ono went back to Japan. Robert went back to finish his economic degree in 1986, and Robert found love in college, and her name was Linda de la Leche. They were both at a random morality class that they were forced to take. They kept working together on projects for a class, and thus a relationship grew from there. Unfortunately, Linda was in a drunk driving accident before Christmas 1987, and Robert was extremely distraught over the loss. Every year since 1988, he went to the spot of the accident and mourned La Leche's loss. He made a promise to never get into a relationship with anyone else and never drink alcohol again. About 10 years later, in December 1999, Robert had a thought. With all the money he got from his house stocks and from the Gooberian bank company, what if he started a foundation that would help out people? He knew he had a calling to help others, so he started the Gooberian Foundation, which was started to research medicine, help develop poorer areas by providing farming and housing, and construct planes for contractors. Robert ran the foundation for 21 years, but he decided to go to a mystical and mysterious land called Goobearia. He went to the hotel in Goobearia to see if there was a demand there. The hotel was then blown up to smithereens as a part of Devon's operation, Bomb Plan. He blew up the various places of William's possession, including the hotel, which wasn't even in William's possession. Robert was not too happy seeing the hotel being destroyed. However, William and Grant decided to rebuild the hotel as a surprise. After the construction was finished, Robert was delighted to see the hard work of William and Grant working together, and he named them honorary members of the Gooberian Foundation. He was not too happy when he heard Devon was the culprit behind the explosion, and plus, he never even heard of his existence even when William tried to tell him that he did exist. Despite that, he hopes to get along with Devon soon. The Foundation and Goobearia got along quite well, and they have multiple plans to work together on, like for example, the rocket. You know, that thing that ever launches, portions of the Ice Express, and the construction of RoboGreg's parts. Grant and the Foundation have been working hard on defense material, like this robot suit and a tank, just to prepare for any potential Ben invasion. As for where we are now, that is where the Gooberian family stands. You could tell that their lineage goes back for a long time and from around the world. If you ever wonder what happened to the other family members, well, George and Kakuo Ono are still alive thanks to the bee's life extenders. So yeah, they're cyborgs now. Donna, Giovanna, still doing their thing. Their children, still doing their thing. The Foundation is still doing good work, and with the other organizations around Goobearia and the world too. But before I go, I just want to say, good job, Mr. Gooberian. Good job to you and your family for being hard workers.